Good evening, everyone. This is Zafar Sobhan, and I'm here with John Danilowicz. This is the Jay-Z Show. We're joined today by Saimum Parvez, who has many hats, including the one he's wearing right now. But he is the chief editor of Bangla Outlook, which is an online news outlook which you may be familiar with. He is his day job. He's an academician with his PhD in international security. Teaches in Norway, I believe. Is that correct? And of special interest, he's also a special assistant to the BNP Chairperson's Foreign Affairs Committee. So obviously a man of wide-ranging interests and influence. Welcome to the show, Simon.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me in your show.
Okay. We'll get back to you, but before we bring Saimum in, John, why don't you always have a interesting background, and I noticed that today is no different. So why don't you tell us what has inspired your choice of background today?
Sure. So the photo in the background is a photo of the battlefield of Yorktown, Virginia, which famously was the last major battle of the American Revolution, the war against Great Britain. I put that on the screen because this past weekend was the 244th anniversary of the Battle of Yorktown. Many people know that this was the last major engagement of the war, but what fewer people know is it actually took about 2 years before a peace treaty was signed between the U.S. and England. And then the U.S. Constitution itself wasn't passed and ratified by the states until 1789. So I guess the message that I wanted to convey as a child of revolution myself, as an American, is that revolutions take time and they go through different phases. So as we think about Bangladesh, a lot has happened in the last year and few months. A lot's happened in the last 3 weeks, Zafar, since we talked to each other last time. So
Yeah.
while we get focused on the day-to-day, every once in a while, it's I think useful to kind of take a step back and realize that events unfold at their own pace, and developments come sometimes when you least expect them.
No, absolutely. It is a marathon, not a sprint. And I think one of the problems of the modern world is we, of course, do tend to see things on a far more foreshortened horizon than perhaps is realistic. But Simon, on that note, why don't I bring you into the conversation? Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you see things? Let's start with probably the major event of this past week was the signing of the July Charter. Tell me a little bit about how you see that in terms of the significance. And also, we would have to talk about the fact that the NCP have not signed it, and what is the significance of that moving forward, and how will that play out in the next 2 or 3 months in anticipation of February elections?
Thank you so much, Zafar. I think July Charter is one of the biggest steps in the history of Bangladesh. And this is like unprecedented because in Bangladesh, the political parties and actors, they settle things with showing their muscle on the street. Generally, we have seen that over the years. Every like changing of powers, it involves with like political violence and street violence. But for the first time, after the fall of Sheikh Hasina regime, after fifth democratic political actors, they started to talk with each other, and these like consensus meetings, it has done a tremendous job of like bringing together all of these political actors who have their like different agenda and different political ideologies, but they have their consensus. And this is like unprecedented that people of Bangladesh, they have seen that political parties, they sit together and they sign a charter. Of course, they have like their divisions and different political ideologies. But I think this is the first time, this is a kind of unprecedented thing in Bangladesh, where political parties, they solve them. And in the case of NCP, I think it kind of overreacted with the July Charter, because they, in this path of not signing July Charter, Jamaat Islam was with them, and now NCP is only there who are not signed. But the consensus committee, they have made it very clear that even now NCP can sign the charter. Yeah. So I think in the coming days, NCP will understand that we don't live in, we need to like walk the path gradually, and this is the world where we get things slowly building blocks and blocks. Yeah. So you cannot just jump like a fifth floor all of a sudden. You will reach the fifth floor. So the thing is, I think NCP will understand, and the things and the points they're making, their arguments about, I think this is not realistic. Why? Because referendum, if you can hold the referendum with the regular election, this is more convenient for the people, because you will have
logistically, it seems to make much more sense. You're going to the polls once rather than twice. Yeah.
For the people as well, and also like budget-wise of money for organizing a referendum of like 170 million people. Yeah, so I think they will understand and they will eventually sign the charter.
Okay. John, that I think jives very much with what you wrote in your analysis, which you published in Counterpoint immediately upon. Expand on that a little bit and add your thoughts.
Sure. So a couple of things. I think in some ways the most significant part of the charter signing was it marked a clear end of a phase in the democratic transition. So now to elections, and hopefully on the road to democracy as well as we move forward. But you know, when we were preparing for today's show, we were talking about our own backgrounds, and you know, part of my background. And one of the core principles we had was that you couldn't criticize a strategy unless you could come up with a better alternative. So for me, the interim government, when it comes to reforms, had three broad options. One was generalize, that's what the 111 government did. They pushed through reforms, and then the political parties or the political party that took power basically ignored that and did what they wanted to. The other option would have been to do nothing and just hold elections immediately after August 2024. Some political actors, understandably, would have preferred that option because it would have meant, presumably, basically go out the window unless the political parties themselves are prepared to deliver. So this middle ground that the interim government chose to get as much reform as possible with consensus of the political parties and then build from there, to me, still CP not signing. It wasn't because they thought that the July Charter went too far. It's that they thought it didn't go far enough. So now what you have is a baseline where, again, all of the pro-democracy political parties have agreed to some set of meaningful reforms and hopefully can build on that. So if you look at the alternative of zero reform or reforms that didn't really have a reach is in a pretty good place right now.
I think I want to add another thing, John, that there is a kind of tendency of not trusting the politicians in Bangladesh. And this is very dangerous, I think, because ultimately politicians. And that's why if you think that we will do some reforms and then the political government will come to power and they will follow all those reforms that we will make now, then I think this is not a good idea. Actually, we need to bring all that they will be willingly want to implement those reformations. If we don't trust the politicians, and if we want to make them obey and follow all those reformations, actually, they have to be on board, and they have to be willing to actually implement those reformations. And I think, on behalf of Bangladesh Nationalist Party (BNP), what I understand, that the leadership of BNP to implement all these reformations that they are actually promising now.
No, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, I think there has been a little overemphasis over the last year on the letter of the law. Now, don't get me wrong. Of course, having stuff written down on paper, having a July charter which is signed by people, is of extreme significance, as both of you have said. At the end of the day, however, and this speaks to your point, exist in the hearts of the people who are going to be actually governing the country following an election, it's really not going to fly. It's not really going to work. And I think that's really important. And this, again, that speaks to your point, John, where you said that this is one of the great achievements of the interim government, and in an imaginative achievement, in the fact that they thought that, look, to the extent possible, bring them in to the process. I mean, I think it's true. I mean, I think I agree with you that this is unprecedented. And I think hopefully it will have laid the groundwork for really thoroughgoing and comprehending what less than what some people have hoped for and anticipated. But we have to be realistic. And as you said, these things don't happen in a day.
A kind of beauty of democracy. Yeah.
Yes.
So there will be always a kind of tension between the political actors,
Sure,
society, and eventually we'll get there. Yeah. So if we
No, absolutely, yeah, absolutely. The thing is this, and if at all knew that from the outset that 2 years was probably the maximum period anyone could give the interim government, I think they themselves never had any intention to stay longer than that. And in the end, it's going to be somewhat close to 18 months and 2 years. But obviously, when we're talking about reform, that's not something that happens in 18 months. It is a process which continues, or even in the next 10 years, the whole process will continue. It will continue. And so that's why it's so important to have that buy-in, because it's not something that happens overnight. It's not something which you can just sort of dust your hands off and say, well, we're done. On the subject of unprecedented actions, I want to also discuss the other one of the army officers, and that's something which I think has not been seen in Bangladesh before. But again, Saimum, we start with you. What are your thoughts on that?
The thing is, like, what we observed during July revolution, August. This is horrible. Yeah. So our children were killed, and there are so many people who were critically injured, and we now know they were actually used to kill our children. And these state machineries include police, military, border guard, and all sorts of ruling party activists, and their loyal thugs as well. So it happened, yeah. So they killed within like 3 weeks. So and we have seen video footages that some of the military personnel, they were involved in these killings, yeah. And the helicopters, those were used to like fire on the common people from the helicopter. Those are like military helicopters as well. Yeah, some of the like over enthusiastic or like partisan section of the law enforcement agencies, they were involved in these like crimes against humanity. So now there is no doubt that that they will face trial, but the problem is that how and when. Yeah. So we are in a critical juncture of holding a fair election, and also enforcement agency is not like totally what can I say, like in action. Yeah. So that's why the interim government is in a kind of sensitive position, that how they will deal this relationship with the military, and that's why and also maintaining a good relation with the military. And my position is we need to ensure a fair trial of the military officers who were involved and were the perpetrators of crimes against humanity. And our acting chairman, he made it very clear in his interview with BBC Bangla that we will ensure a fair trial of the Jews. At the same time, we also think that we don't need to make military uncomfortable. Yeah. So this is.
Can I be very uncomfortable? And I speak to this not just as an American, but as somebody who spent a lot of time in Pakistan. Because ultimately, for me, this isn't just about accountability for the past, but it's about the future as well. And it's not just about what happened in July and August of 2024. I watched the Inagar files, the videos of the enforced disappearances, with the first two episodes being about Humam Qadr Chowdhury and then Ahmed bin Qasim. This is reprehensible what was done to them. Military personnel were responsible for not only executing these crimes, but then sustaining them over many years. So I'm sorry, it may make generals or privates or colonels or majors uncomfortable, but so be it. Let them be uncomfortable. And again, the acting chairman of the BNP was himself a victim of this when he was in prison.
Okay. Let me make it clear. When I say that for the people who were involved in these crimes, yeah, of course we need to make them uncomfortable, and of course we need to ensure fair trial for these perpetrators. What I'm trying to say that there is you violate the law, whether it will be the trial will be conducted by the military or it will be conducted by the civil court. So that tension I was talking about, that tension, I'm not talking about making in like the intermilitary, not the people who actually committed the crime. So of course they should face the trial. Yeah, and then our party will also ensure that anyone who was involved in July killings, and also, as you mentioned, that in the last 15 years or 17 years, how our party members, our activists, they were the victim of all kind of extrajudicial killings by, and then some of the military officers were directly involved in these like horrific crimes. So when I was talking about making uncomfortable, it was the military which were not involved, and they were kind of the current law of the land. Yeah. So it is about the technicality, not I'm not talking about the morality of the situation. Thank you.
I think that's fair enough. I mean, I think there's not too much difference or distance between we want justice. And of course, John's point is also true. We want to make sure that there is no ambiguity in terms of the military's relationship with the civilian branch of in other countries. Pakistan is just one example where things have gone in a fundamentally undemocratic direction, and we certainly don't want that in Bangladesh. We have had our brushes with martial law, some very long ones in the past. And I think certainly no one in Bangladesh, or very few people in Bangladesh, would want us to return to those days, and certainly would not be in Bangladesh's interest. But I think it is important to balance out, Gyami, well-meaning, patriotic Bangladeshi men and women, and that is, of course, to be kept in mind. Moving quickly, Saimum, you had mentioned in your answer, you alluded to and you referred to Tarique Rahman's interview. We'll bring John in on this in a second, but tell us a little bit about when can we hope to see? I think it's a great question everyone in Bangladesh has. Can you tell us anything about when we can hope to see Tarique in return to Bangladesh? Because of course, I think that's the final piece of the puzzle, with elections coming up in February. And of course, I think it will make a huge difference in terms of to have him here to then take control of the campaigning process.
I think he's already in control. Like what he does, his everyday routine, that he actually works for party for like around 14 at the morning by conducting all those meetings with the party meetings, and stays on and on until he's like exhausted and tired. So so 1 month ago we had a policy meeting. We attended the meeting for 5 hours continuously, 5 hours. So like he is in action, and he's in charge, and then he is this is a very valid question, that when he will come back. So the answer I can give you that he will come back very soon, very soon.
Okay.
And all the preparations are going. When he will come, it will be announced formally by the party. But all the preparations are going on, and
one of the things I understand, which is to me really kind of is out of all of the facts and the figures and the assurances people have given me, this one really hits home, is that this cat is getting all of the official papers necessary, the requirement to come back to Bangladesh. So when I heard that, I was like, okay, now that's something you can take to the bank.
Yeah.
So, I've told people many times that, I've been fortunate to meet most of the past years. The one notable exception is Tarique Rahman. We've actually never met. But I've been focused on his return for some time. And, again, it's water under the bridge at this point, but I think he's made a mistake by not returning earlier. And I'll tell you why. It's not about whether he is fully in control of his party, or whether he's communicating with a very diligent schedule of engaging with party party interlocutors. To me, though, for 17 years plus being away from Bangladesh, Tarique Rahman doesn't know Bangladesh in 2025. And I can say this because I had been away for 10 years. And just the fact of going back, the country has changed in important ways since I had last been there. And you can't really get a feel for that unless you're on the ground. So I doesn't know the country. And on the other hand, I don't think the country knows him. I mean, they know the image of him. They know him on a Zoom screen. Now they're knowing a little bit more about him through these interviews. But in my view, he needs to, if he wants to be the next prime minister, he needs to understand Bangladesh. Bangladeshis need to know him. And he needs to spend some time beyond campaigning to win an election, becomes a prime minister or gets into a senior position. Once you're in that position, you're in a bubble. And in Bangladesh and the Westminster system, there's not a long transition period. The elections will happen one day, and then very soon thereafter, the government will be formed if he and all of those requirements. So these days and weeks before the election are precious time. And cats aside, I love cats, and I have one that I had come with me around the world. I think he needs to get to Bangladesh as soon as possible because time is wasting. And once he's in Bangladesh, I hope he goes beyond just election, trying to understand the country which he hopes to perhaps govern.
Yeah, thank you so much, John, for your saying that he only knows the parliament. I think it is not true. He knows Bangladesh, and he is from a family who are involved with Bangladesh politics and history for every like transitional. When he talks with and interacts with people, it is not only party. So he mostly attends the meeting with the party men, but also he talks with the common people as well. Philanthropy programs as well. Yeah. So and a vast amount of his time he actually spends like trying to know the country and in the country. But I agree with you that there is a value of staying in the country in person, and that's why, as I said, that he will come very soon to the country. Yeah, thank you.
Of course, it's not just that he needs to know Bangladesh. And as you point out, that he has been engaging, of course, very fully, not just recently, but one presumes, for the entire tenure of his exile in London. But Bangladesh needs to know him, and perhaps that is the element which would have been enhanced a little bit. And he is giving interviews. He has prior to these interviews, there have been on occasion talks which have appeared on watch those and distribute those. But I think it is important for the Bangladeshi people. It's been a long time, and they perhaps a new generation. It's been, what would it be, 17 years? A new generation probably barely have any recollection of him at all. And for an earlier generation, their recollection of him would be from his tenure from 2001 to 2000. He's a very different person. We all grow. In
no, it is not like it is all about perception. His character was assassinated by the different parties of the media during the Hasina regime. He was projected as a different person to the common, and people who actually work closely with him and engages with people who engage with him, they understand that this is not a new thing. This is not a change. Actually, he is the person. He is the person who is very mature. Who is a person who is humble and gentle, and also he is a person who doesn't give in the contemporary Bangladesh when he is planning his campaign strategy and when he's planning for the future of Bangladesh. He's giving importance to not to gather all the muscle power he is giving importance to policies. So when he's actually forming a different technical expert teams who will work on the policies, and he has started it. And I think this is one of the remarks will be like very visible in the coming days. That what he is trying to do, he's trying to change the dynamic of politics in Bangladesh, because in politics in Bangladesh is all about a kind of showing off, and this is a kind of power relations. He is trying to make this competition of the policies. So we will make some policies on education, health, agriculture, environment, and our competitors like NCP and Jama, they will present their policies. This competition will be between the policies. Yeah. So in coming months, when we will present like the technical teams and expert teams, present our ideas, like very detailed ideas, that what we are going to do if we can be elected by fair election.
Okay, now, well, I look forward to that, because I think in the past that's always been very important to really ground these political discussions we have in ideology and in policy, rather than on personality or on family loyalty, which has perhaps been there in the past. We're just about out of time. Do you have some final words, John?
No, again, I take all that Saimum has said, and I appreciate the clarification and the perspective. I approach this as not a partisan for any particular political party, but as a well-wisher for the country. As I noted, we've entered an important new stage now with, again, de facto or not, we're in a campaign season. There'll be a lot of focus on jockeying for position and how to attract votes. But I hope those, again, in the political arena are also thinking, as Simon said, about how to get asked to implement these policies in senior positions in the next government. So there's a lot that has to take place in the next 6 months. And of course, the interim government itself has to adjust its role as it moves, I think, more into the background, focuses on that main task of holding the elections and then preparing for looking ahead. There's a unique opportunity in Bangladesh right now to have a transition from one government to another that isn't full of the partisan rancor that has been involved in previous transitions.
On that note, thank you so much, John. Thank you for joining us, Saimum. I'm really glad to get to speak with you. I think learned a great deal, and hope we will have more of these conversations in the future. Thank you.
And the final thing I would say is that Tarique Rahman is always welcome on the Jay-Z show.
If you can make it happen, we'd be very pleased. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay.